How's everybody this morning? Awesome. All right. It is my pleasure to be here this morning. My name is Barbara Jessie Black. My pronouns are she and her, and I'm the president and CEO of a nonprofit in Chapel Hill, Carborough called Community Works. It's also my privilege to serve as the board chair for Youth Mentoring Collaborative, or YMC. And I would like to welcome you all today on behalf of the board of directors and the staff of YMC to the 2020 Carolinas Youth Mentoring Symposium. We're excited to have all of you in the room today, and especially because we're going to be participating in some really important work today. As an organization that has joy as one of its core values, we promise that today will be filled with joy. You will have opportunities today to engage with each other, to be creative, to have fun, and to learn from each other. And we'll also probably tug on your heartstrings a bit as we move through the day and through lunch with our award ceremony. Our hope is that at the end of the day, your heart, your spirit, and your mind will be full. And of course, we can't do any of this without the support of our community, which includes all of you in this room, especially you that are young, and our sponsors. And so I'd like to list a few of our sponsors, and you can find additional information of our sponsors on the YMC website. So our presenting sponsor today is Sierra Arts and Science Foundation. Our silver sponsor is NC IDEA. And we have two community sponsors, Community Works and Provident 1898. I'd also like to thank very briefly, but wholeheartedly, the YMC team. So if the YMC team is in the room, please stand up. So Atreus Good, President and CEO, who you saw in the video, Melina Swinton, who's the Vice President of Community Engagement, Connellan Jackson, who's the Vice President of Training and Organization Development, and Hannah McKinney, who's the Manager of Communications and Storytelling. They're the folks that have made this event possible. And my fellow board members, if you all are here as well. There we go. All right, we've got a few here. So thank you all. Just a few before I close my welcoming remarks, just a few housekeeping tips. I'm sure all of you know where the restrooms are by now if you got here between 9 and 10. The opening plenary will be in this particular room. Lunch will be served from 12:20 to 1:25, where we'll include an awards ceremony and also some music. And the day should wrap up between 4 and 4:30 p.m. Please refer to the agenda for the meat and bulk of the sessions, and let's have a fabulous day. Thank you all so much.
Hello. Got the mic? Got the microphone? Oh, there we go. Greetings, everyone, and good morning. Thank you for joining us today, and welcome to our first session on youth power. My name is DeLeon Gray, and I'm honored to be joined by Sonali, Ratnasinghe, Jaylen, Segers, and Justice Skinner. Thank you so much for allowing me to share the stage with you this morning. There's a couple reasons why I'm excited about this conversation. For one, I know that you're going to challenge us to broaden our perspective on what it means for you to lead. I know you're going to give us your perspective, which allows us to see the blind spots that might exist in our work as adults. You're going to invite us into being part of a larger network community of people who are trying to figure this out. So wherever people are in their journey towards supporting youth empowerment, or youth power, I should say, versus empowerment, empower building. you're going to challenge us to think deeper and revisit some of our working assumptions, but figure it out together. But last, you're going to give us some concrete strategies. And so these gems will really help us tap in to the way that we should be supporting, working alongside, and allowing you really to, lead us forward. And so, we're here for a good time, not a long time. So we're going to just jump right in. So here's my first question. Please teach us and introduce yourself as you do. Please teach us about your leadership efforts that you've been conducting and engaging in over the years and the story behind it. So we'll start with Sonali, then go to Justice, then go to Jaylen.
Hi all, my name is Sonali and I go by she, her pronouns. So a little bit about the organization I founded. So I'm currently a UNC Chapel Hill student, a freshman there. So right now kind of at home. But what I have done over the past few years is I have lots of friends and loved ones who kind of came to me during the COVID-19 pandemic and asked me a lot of questions about fundraising. So to preface a little bit, I have a lot of fundraising experience and it was just kind of my thing. So especially during the COVID pandemic, I've decided that this is something I wanted to put more time into. But as people started coming to me, I realized that they didn't have the resources that they needed to really get involved. That being said, General Services Foundation was founded. General Services Foundation is a 501c3 nonprofit based in the RDU area in hopes to provide mentorship and funding for students to start their own impact initiatives. So these are projects such as fundraisers, events, and item drives for over 40 local nonprofits that we serve. And our hope is that if we can provide accessibility to students, they can find their sense of purpose in the nonprofit community. And our hope with that is we can provide not just resources, but also opportunities such as fellowships, internships, and other ways for them to find their voice and find their place in the community.
Good morning, everyone. Again, my name is Justice Skinner. I have served with Youth Mentoring Collaborative for 2 years now. My story is I always grew up in a variety of leadership positions. And so coming to Youth Mentoring Collaborative out of my mentoring program, once I was complete with that, it really gave me an opportunity to give back and do more work in hopes to gain experience to have my own mentoring organization someday. Our mission is to offer no-cost consulting to a variety of mentoring organizations and support them in as many ways as possible so that they can have the success they need. So yes, that's my story.
Hey everybody, my name is Jaylen Segers, pronouns he, him, his, and I work in the City of Durham Office on Youth as a project assistant. So kind of just wrapping in my story and how the work that I do is still evident. So I kind of bring it back starting around 15 and a half. I started working with the city, right? And there was this program called My Durham. It was a after school program through Parks and Rec. And in that, I was able to kind of see evident, my first example of me actually exercising my voice, and I was able to influence a lot of the decisions on what the programming should look like, how it should be tailored to other young people that are coming out to the rec centers and everything. And it kind of gave me some confidence and just my first footing in I didn't always have language, right? But I was actually evidently doing the work, right? Youth engagement work. And I think over time, once I got to, so I'm a Central student. I go to North Carolina Central. I'm a senior there now. But freshman year, I ran into this office called the Office on Youth, and it allowed me to really kind of take that to a whole nother level, right? So within the office, it's this 2-part piece where we do authentic youth engagement, right? So this piece around engaging young people in initiatives and projects, but allowing them to be leaders and co-creators and decision makers throughout the whole process, right? And also this other piece around like just advising and like really just showing up for like other offices in the city and like really influencing them on how they can like show up and carry out their youth engagement efforts as well. Just to make sure that it's done in a way that, yeah, really it's not just like it's forward facing, but it's really involving young people in the forefront and allowing that to be evident all throughout. So that's kind of been my story and what the work has looked like now.
Wow. These are some really next level ways that you all have been leading. Jaylen, you mentioned something, you mentioned the word exercising. I want to unpack that a little bit. So when I think about the notion of youth power, sometimes I think about it as, just, like a workout, going to the gym, maybe, you might get in there, you hit the bench and, they drop that weight on you and you don't, really, you might need a spot, right? And then over time you get stronger and stronger, you can put more reps in, you can put the bar up faster, and even put on more weight. And so, with that in mind, how does this analogy resonate with you of thinking about exercising youth power from that perspective? So I'd like you to comment, and then Sonali, could you jump in as well?
That's a great analogy just to start. So yeah, like just thinking around like exercising and working out. So I kind of just bring up a example early within the office, right? So stepping into the office, Nori's in the back. He's also a project assistant in the office. But there was a presentation. It was to City College, but this was like super early when we started. And it was this piece around like having the skills. I've done presentations and stuff before, but like seeing it through the lens of like our work, still learning, right? So like this piece of, hey, we have a presentation, prepping for it, all these certain things, right? So when we were ready to actually carry out our presentation and everything, Elise Fraser, she's also, just a huge influence in our office. And like, she was there to support us while we were presenting. And it was this piece around like, wow, though we were like kind of prepping and getting prepared for it, we were actually able to kind of come in there and hold our own. And it ended off really successful. And then just tying it back to like the whole exercising piece, like when you exercise, right, you, even if it's one like exercise, when you're doing it, you build a lot of strength. So even if you're now facilitating and note-taking and showing up in a lot of other areas within the work, that strength still remains, right? So it could be a totally new exercise, but just because you've been a part of other spaces before, it's kind of giving you that endurance and like that confidence to carry that over into some of the other like endeavors and work and like what that looks like in the work and stuff. So that's kind of how I see it.
Wow. Okay. Muscle memory.
Yeah, so I'm kind of going to build off of that because I think that's the perfect example and the perfect analogy, like exercise, because I know personally when I first got involved in exercising and especially going in the gym, there's this sense of nervousness you have, like, oh my God, everyone around me knows so much more, has been here for so much longer. They're the ones who really know what they're doing. Like, why should I be here? And I think that's especially where mentorship comes in. Because, sometimes you have a personal trainer, a friend, a coach of some sort that kind of helps move you forward, helps you find that confidence, helps you find that form. And that's much needed in the mentorship and youth leadership realm as well. I know personally, when I was first getting involved in the nonprofit sector, that was difficult because I was 16 years old. I knew none of the nonprofits. If you asked me to name 5, I couldn't, but I knew what I wanted and I needed to do. So I had so many amazing nonprofit leaders come and offer their tidbits of advice, tell me, hey, you can do this. This is exactly what you're here and you need to do for the community. And so I felt like that is a great equivalent to having your personal trainer at the gym. And so I think that youth mentorship is so important because you're advocating for a young person. You're helping them find their path and their way of doing things. Because at the end of the day, it's a partnership. They know what they need to do, but sometimes there's different areas where you can assist them. That might be leadership, that might be public speaking, it might be so many different things. But at the end of the day, you're here to guide them, but you're also here to learn from them just as they're here to learn from you.
And that's why I'm taking notes right now. So along those lines, one thing that Sonali mentioned was this idea of a personal trainer. I want to piggyback on that a little bit and ask Justice and then Jaylen, to comment on, specifics. Is there anybody who you would want to give their flowers right now because they supported you in a meaningful way and were in right relationship with you as a young person looking to do leadership work?
Yeah, so I think the person who sticks out in my head the most is our president and CEO, Trace Good. From kind of a young age, from when I started with Youth Mentoring Collaborative, I was presented with a lot of opportunities to further develop my skills and work on that leadership aspect, whether that be getting to attend conferences or even being here speaking at the symposium. But yes, that's who I see in my mind has just stuck by me and guided me on that path of leadership.
Yeah, and just to extend some flowers to some just influential people that's been in my life, especially in this space. I want to shout out to Laura Khalil. She's in the back. She's our manager at the Office on Youth. Elise Frazier as well, if she was here, and really just the whole Office on Youth fam. But I would say that because I think before I mentioned before, I was doing the work, but sometimes I didn't always have language or have the full guidance of what it looked like and how to carry it forward and how to truly show up in it and finding my way with inside the work. So I just wanted to shout them out just because from the very beginning they created and allowed space for me to learn, to grow, and even if it was just slight pushes to promote my growth, like a seed, right? Planted in soil and just watering it, and the stem just kept growing. And now I'm able to just see the flower bloom into something so beautiful, even right now. But yeah, I just want to shout them out because they do it day in and day out. And it's evident and it kind of flows to everybody else in the office, and just wanted to uplift them right now. So yeah, shout out to y'all.
And not only do they do it day in and day out for you all, but they also have built a whole collaborative of sorts of different organizations under them in the community in Durham doing the work, which is really impressive. What struck me was the reflection tool that they have for folks doing work with you to understand whether or not they're in right relationship with young people. And I didn't score as high as I thought I would have on that. So I thank you for the push. But Jaylen, while you have the mic, you've seen a lot and you've engaged in a lot of different types of initiatives. What's the secret sauce to really making things work?
Yeah, there's a lot of ingredients I can add in the sauce for sure. But three kind of stick out. I think starting with intentionality, authenticity, and consistency, right? So I have this beautiful report right here. It's the Durham Youth Listening Project report. So this was a project that I was able to work on as soon as I came into the office, right? And back in 2019. And from the very beginning, every step of the way, kind of starting around this intentionality piece, we in the office kind of already, before we even just we have this project, we want to put it out to community, get folks involved, we just kind of sat and paused hey, who do we want to be centered? Who are the audiences that we want to be centered from the start? And how do we truly want to show up, right? Not this piece of creating this report and just putting it out there and then getting that feedback, but actually having young people serving in leadership positions right there, allowing them to have the space to exercise their voice in the very beginning, right? Like what decisions we would make, how should we show up, how should we come into these sessions? And from there, it led to us going out, and the whole basis of the report is just this piece around like, centering the needs and the dreams of young people, and how we can make that even more evident in Durham, right? So being able to like go and have these conversations, it wasn't this piece like, oh, we're just going to go and do this, but we actually were able to just transitioning into like the authenticity piece, just like us being vulnerable every step. And then that created a space to where whether we were engaging with young people, their caregivers and families, it created a space and allowed them to be vulnerable with us as well. So even transitioning after that, we get into this piece around just sense making and reflecting back. And it still goes with like this intentionality piece, but after we heard what we heard, right, we went through a sense making phase of just like, hey, how can we make sure we're just being accountable to all the young people, all the perspectives that we heard in creating this report. And after the sense making phase, we went to a reflecting back phase to where it was more like this piece around, okay, we've had recordings, we had note taking, but now we're not just going to put out the report, just going off like what we heard the first round. We wanted to double back on that and make sure that, hey, like, did we get it right in creating and like starting the piece and write the report? Did we get this right? And being able to like being present in that, and being able to like shift if someone was like, oh no, hey, we're talking about this, like being able to shift and pivot. But after that, then we this started in 2019, like I mentioned, y'all, and we didn't officially put the report out till February of like 2021, but it was still this piece around like taking those steps all the step of the way, and just this piece around consistency. It just, you don't want it to just be like, oh, you're here today and gone tomorrow, but like truly building those relationships. I think we all heard in the video, but like making sure that that's sustained all across the board. So yeah, just intentionality, authenticity, and consistency.
Yeah, it sounds like we're not talking about, a microwave kind of job here when it comes to power building. We're talking about crock pot, and making something good,
Definitely crock pot for sure.
So with that, in mind, we want to, be encouraging. So we appreciate those keys. At the same time, speaking, you mentioned the word authenticity. We, wouldn't really be doing the topic justice if we allow people to only think about the positives and have because they could walk away with the oversimplified view of what it takes to really pull this work off. So in thinking about the different challenges that come up when trying to power build with young people and support them, I want to hear from first Justice and then Sonali on, what are the challenges involved that people need to be aware of?
Yeah, absolutely. So from my perspective and experience within Youth Mentoring Collaborative, I've noticed some of the challenges are getting people in positions of power to care about mentoring. There definitely are people in like office who support us, but we have to continue making that effort to get them to realize like we need support and funding. That's the most important thing. So that's why we work constantly to get like bills passed and just continue to do that work so that our mission doesn't go unnoticed, because we're still a young corporation, so we have a way to go, but it starts with getting people to care. The other challenge I would say is remembering our mission. That it hasn't been a huge issue, but that definitely matters in the long run, because if you just get tied into the work and not remember why you're doing it, that can lead to problems. So I think that's another key aspect, is remembering why you're doing it and also getting people to realize that what we're doing matters.
Okay, so I'm going to start off by plus oneing like all of that. But especially the piece about like knowing your why, because I think that is quite essential. and something that you kind of lose with time if you don't actively think about it. But another point that I will bring up is the implicit biases that we all have as human beings. I feel like that's a word that's so used nowadays, but especially in the mentoring realm, it's true. We heard earlier, like in the video, how there's this whole idea of this savior complex that sometimes comes up. And we want to make sure that that's not the reason why someone's in mentorship. But I also think a huge piece of it is understanding not just the why, but how you're interacting with your mentee or your mentor. Because I understand that there is a huge stereotype behind students, especially Gen Z, whether you like it or not, that, for example, we're always obsessed with our phones. We are passionate, but sometimes rude. We don't really know where we stand on things. And I feel like that's very untrue, especially working with students myself who are galvanized for change in so many different sectors of the nonprofit world, whether homelessness or food insecurity, amongst so many other things. But I think kind of coming into that, we need to realize what our implicit biases look like, but then also why they shouldn't be there. Because I know personally, I've been very much impacted by what people have said about me. I've had people tell me, I'm doing this for college applications back like when I was still in high school. And that was troubling because I was like, wait, am I? And it made me doubt myself. And so then you also have the thing of being a young person or a person of color in an area that's not. And you have that imposter syndrome where you feel like you don't belong. You don't feel like you have anything important to say, when in reality, we all do. And so remembering that as an adult, but then also remembering that as one of us. We all have something to say. We all have an opinion, and that's okay. And it's honestly good. Share your opinion. Have that conversation. Even if the conversation might be difficult, it's one that likely needs to be had. And so I'd say that's probably my biggest piece of advice to both mentors and mentees.
Yeah, and sometimes people, dismiss opinions because that's your opinion. I like the word perspective, because if I'm seeing something from a different angle, then in my opinion, from my perspective, it can add value and cover some holes that people wouldn't otherwise see. So related to that, I have another question for you, Sonali. You broke that down, but for those on the fence about, really supporting youth and providing them with these power building opportunities at the next level, what's the reward for doing this work well?
Okay, so that's a good question. And personally, I saw this quote. I can't remember where or who it was from, but I saw this a few days ago and it really resonated with me. It was that Gen Z and our youth, they're not our future. They are our now. That's a big thing that you always hear. Oh, youth are our future. Like, we need to teach them so they can have these conversations and be in politics, be in Congress, have that say in all these different issues. But my question is, why can't they have that conversation now? They have started to understand what's going on. Like, I feel like that's pretty essential for us all to understand now. And for example, we just had the first Gen Z member of Congress elected a few days ago. Like, that's amazing. But that being said, I feel like having this conversation and having Gen Z in the picture helps you understand who you're serving, especially in areas of power where, first of all, the people you're serving, whether talking about policy or nonprofit or wherever, if there's youth involved, have them in the conversation. That's what I absolutely love about the Youth Mentoring Collaborative and how they have youth board members and things like that. Because when you bring them in the conversation, they understand what they need better than an adult may understand what you need. And so when we always talk about bringing people with unique backgrounds, with unique ideas, who can bring different initiatives to the table, that's us. And so I think you have so many more areas of growth within yourself and your organization when you bring youth conversation to the table.
So, as we close, I have a question for the panelists. So we've heard different perspectives. But as the audience takes some things away, what's some things about what your fellow panelists said that you don't want the audience to miss? In other words, let's start with Justice, then Sonali, then Jaylen to close us out. What have you heard your fellow panelists say? And what do you want us to do with that information next?
Yeah, that's a great question. So something that really stuck out to me that Sonali said was we have to remove those biases. I think that really comes down to being an important factor in any situation, but especially within this line of work that we're in and what we're trying to accomplish, that really matters. So yeah, I really agreed with that point. And as for what the next steps are and what happens after this, I would say like reach out and find out how you can support in any capacity, whether you're within a mentoring organization or you want to donate or what have you. But I think that's really one of the key ways that people can get involved and just support in general. Yep.
I think one thing that really stood out to me personally was Justice's conversation on understanding your why. Because at the end of the day, there's always so many things going on. No matter what area of the mentorship realm you're in, whether a mentee, a mentor, an organization, it's always good to kind of come back to the root of why you're doing what you do. And I know personally that's something that my team has to come back, and even our students have to come back and say, okay, wait, why are we doing what we're doing? And then it really helps create some meaningful conversation around that. That being said, my biggest ask for all of you is not just get involved with an organization that does mentorship work, but really thoughtfully listen to what's going on throughout the rest of the panel we have today, and all the different sessions. And you're going to go and attend all these different conversations. But when you find an area you're passionate about, because I promise you, you'll find something today, engage with that person or that organization and see how you can get more involved. Like I know personally, our organization is looking for board members. I know Youth Mentoring Collaborative is always looking for different ways that people can get involved, and so many other things. So see how you can really engage with the organizations you meet here today.
Oh my goodness, it's hard to follow these two. But I'll just kind of like just want to uplift just what both of them have already said. Justice mentioned around like for maybe folks that are already kind of doing this work or have an interest in like getting involved, like coming into it and just kind of putting yourself out there, right? Like showing up and being able, like you mentioned, DeLeon, like coming into it with an open perspective, right? Like sometimes we come into things and it's like, hey, this is what I've done and this is what it will always be. But like just being able to be present in the work that you're doing with the people that you're doing it with, and that will yield like a better outcome, in the long run. And then this piece that Sonali mentioned around like those implicit biases and being able to like take those out of yourself, or like this piece of just like, yeah, like already dismissing those. And then what I thought was really powerful that for you, like even this piece of like, even if they were present, like still remaining like focused and being present and like saying, no, like my voice does matter. Like the work that I'm doing is powerful. And, I think it would work out even the better having folks already in that work kind of move that stuff out the way for you, or you can just easily kind of just walk into the calling, the purpose that's like that you're supposed to be like carrying out. So I think in the combination of those, and I guess like my last kind of wrap around is just this piece around like, yeah, if you're already doing the work or you have interest on like getting involved, really just coming into it with that open perspective, but prioritizing youth voice in the forefront. Don't like, oh, I want to build this thing up, and then on the back end try to engage young people. Just this piece of like, if you have like you wouldn't get to step 10 and then once you're at step 10, oh snap, we're missing some things like, oh, I need to run it back to step 1. You know what I mean? Like, why don't you just start at step 1? You know, it would yield a better outcome for what you're trying to build, and not just what you're trying to build, but this piece around like what we're trying to build, what we're trying to like grow and see be present in our communities, right? So, you know, coming into it with that perspective and yeah, not being afraid to put yourself out there, to receive different things, to just, you know, lose, and it's not even a loss, but like, you know, sharing a piece of the pie, that power, because it would just yield just something so much greater in the long run, and even presently.
Yes, and just building off of that, you know, if we don't involve youth from the very beginning in an authentic way, we're actually hustling backwards. So, you know, with that in mind, thank you all so much for teaching me today. And if you all took some gems away from this conversation, let's give them a warm round of applause and use our voices to say thank you.